Hello and welcome to Legislative Report. I'm State Representative Seth Grove of the 196th District in York County. Recent action by the State Board of Education puts into place the Pennsylvania Common Core standards. These would be the guidelines for what our students should know and include tests called the Keystone exams. Joining me today to discuss the Common Core standards along with other education issues is Secretary of the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Ron Tomalis. Secretary Tomalis, thanks again for joining me.
Great to be here, Representative.
Yeah, we had a great conversation the last half an hour.
Sure.
Obviously, we got a big movement that kind of blew up at the last second for whatever reason, dealing with Common Core standards. Obviously, we've had standards, academic standards here in Pennsylvania for a couple decades now. And obviously, we want to move that rigor of those standards up, have higher expectations of our students. So we have well-educated students going into the workforce, and obviously the more educated our youth are, the better our overall economy, the better our state, the better citizens we will have.
Absolutely.
So there's been a lot of misinformation, unfortunately, out there on Common Core. So I wanted to sit down and discuss it and see if we can get to some truth and shed some light on Common Core.
Sounds good. Let's get to it.
All right. So first and foremost, right now, there's no legislative action needed for Common Core. It's going through the regulatory process. So can you kind of go through the department's regulatory process, because you have a uniquely different regulatory process because you do have the State Board of Education.
Absolutely. The State Board of Education is the entity that's in charge of making sure that the regulations that involve education, both pre-K, K-12, and post-secondary regulations, they're the body that puts those regulations together. And I sit on the State Board. I don't have a vote, but that is a body of citizens and some legislators that are on there that help develop those regulations. The Common Core, Pennsylvania's Common Core standards are embedded in a regulatory package that's going through the State Board right now. And I just want to clarify something that people have a misconception that this is the first time that the State Board and Pennsylvania has already looked at the Pennsylvania Common Core. Actually, this is the second time. The Pennsylvania Common Core went through the State Board of Education back in 2010.
Okay.
This is an updated version, Pennsylvania specific types of standards that we're putting in place now.
So we actually, our standards are Common Core currently, so we're updating them to Pennsylvania specific?
Well, when it was passed in 2010, the model that was being proposed at that time didn't have a lot of the specifics on it. It was an idea that most of the states came together to put together. We actually looked at this model that was developed by two national organizations, the National Governors Association, and my counterparts of all the secretaries of education in all the states came together to develop these rigorous new standards as a model to states. We took that model, we took that outline, and made it more specific to Pennsylvania. In some areas, we made it tougher. In some areas, our Pennsylvania standards were already tough enough. So what was passed in 2010, what we're doing now is just updating that version to make it Pennsylvania specific.
Okay, and obviously increasing some rigor and making it, raising the bar, so to speak.
You know, you hear it, I hear it, traveling around the state, talking to businessmen and women, talking to higher ed teachers, professors, administrators, guidance counselors. Everyone says that the standards that we had in place in 1997 were good for 1997.
Yeah.
Here we are in 2013. We need to raise the expectations for children when they graduate from high school. Why? Because they get this foundation. Then whatever they decide to do in life, whether they decide to go on to post-secondary, whether they decide to go directly into the workforce, our demands are a little bit tougher these days, and so they will be able to succeed with a better academic foundation.
Yeah, and obviously that's the driver.
Absolutely.
Now there's points for public comment within the entire process, regulatory process, because while it goes through State Board, it still has to go through the IRC process,
That's
right?
right.
The Independent Regulatory Review Commission.
That's right.
So there's public input at the State Board level, correct?
Oh, there's been a lot of public input. Back in 2010, there were 4 field hearings that the State Board had just on this issue that they went out across Pennsylvania. Then they came back and they had numerous meetings in the State Board meetings over the course of a year or two on this issue. Legislature had some committee hearings back at then. Now we are back here at 2013. State Board had another group of field hearings across the state, held more hearings at the State Board. All these included public comment where citizens could come in and weigh in.
Yeah, and then after the State Board, it goes over to IRC.
Goes to IRC, yep.
Another public comment period for stakeholders, whether you're a homeschooler, charter school, public school, your teacher, administrator, just somebody out there that cares about the education quality in this state. Another linchpin point, legislators ourselves can go in and make comments. So this is a fully vetted process, fully open to the public.
It has, and that's the last thing that we would have wanted, is to do it any other way but this. And the standards themselves are on the Department of Education, the State Board of Education's website. So I would really encourage that parents, if they have a concern about what's really in the standards, that they go and look at them themselves. And I want to make something pretty clear. There's a lot of, obviously this is an issue that strikes to a lot of concerns of some members of Pennsylvania. And there's a lot of confusion about this. Standards are not curriculum.
Yes.
What we have to understand, the standards in education are what I equate to a football game. It's like the goal line. We're setting these expectations for our children, whether single-digit multiplication for a third grader, or an understanding what a dangling preposition is for, or some other type of grammatical issue is in our language arts standards. That's the goal line that we expect for children. How you get there, the plays that get you to the goal line, is the day-to-day curriculum that happens in our classrooms. That in Pennsylvania is entirely up to the teacher, to the principal, and to the administrator. Pennsylvania has a long, rich history of making sure that the curriculum is controlled at the local level. That has been the case since we've introduced standards in Pennsylvania 2 decades ago. It will continue to be the role of the school district as we go forward under Pennsylvania's version of Common Core.
Yeah, I break it down to people this simply. Standards say you shall teach your students 2 + 2 = 4. How that's done is done at the school district level. They determine how we teach students 2 + 2 = 4.
Other states don't do it that way, and some Pennsylvanians have seen what's happened in other states and say that's what's going to happen here. We don't do that. A good example is a book list. We don't have a state-mandated reading book list that every child in Pennsylvania should read. This book at the 8th grade, let's say To Kill a Mockingbird or something like that, even though I try and get my kids to read that all the time. But we don't have that in Pennsylvania. Other states do. School districts still have that liberty, that freedom to design what the curriculum should be in order to get to the standards.
Yeah, that's great. Let's get into some criticisms and maybe some unfortunately some bad information out there. So some of the criticism comes from the Common Core that they say it's coming from the federal government. The federal government is dictating this on the states. It's a big government approach to education. Some have said taxation without representation. Was Pennsylvania required by the federal government to adopt the Common Core standards?
Well, let's say what Pennsylvania was required to do. And dating back to the 1990s, again, the federal government passed a couple laws in the 90s and 2001, and this is what they said. States should have standards for math and language arts and reading and writing and listening skills. The states should have those standards, and states should test to those standards. Now, there's very specific federal laws that say the federal government can't say what the explicit standards must be, or the curriculum that must be. They're not allowed to venture into that area. That's our space. The federal government, the states got together to put these Common Core standards together. The federal government said, hey, we like this initiative. You can use those Common Core standards to apply for some of our grant programs, or you have to develop your own career and college-ready standards that has to go through a validation process that's lengthy. 45 states were already involved in the Common Core initiative. So that's what Pennsylvania is doing and most of the other states are doing. But there are a number of states that don't want to go the route of their own Common Core and are developing their own set of independent standards. So the federal government is not mandating that the Common Core be adopted.
Yeah. Some have said the race to the top money is contingent upon that. Is that the case? Is there any money contingent upon us doing Common Core standards?
No. Again, the race to the top grant program, which Pennsylvania successfully was a very competitive grant program, and under the Corbett administration, we applied for it. And we got $41 million into Pennsylvania to help our public schools on many academic programs. What the federal government said at the time was either develop your own state standards that's career and college ready, or you can use the Pennsylvania's Common Core. But again, that goes back to what I said about what's been going on for 20 years, where the federal government has said, we want high quality standards. The thing that when I hear the criticism too, and the question that I always ask people are, would we be setting high academic standards and high assessments even if the federal government wasn't around? Obviously we would, and I think we would choose the Pennsylvania Common Core as well. So we're kind of, we got the cart in front of the horse on this one.
Yeah.
We were doing these standards, federal government came along with these grant programs, and we just took advantage of the fact that we're going to apply for it and we're going to do it no matter what.
Yeah, good stuff. Many of the opposition groups point to a 2012 study from the Pioneer Institute that basically says Common Core standards will cost Pennsylvania $645 million. That's being heralded as huge property tax increases, more unfunded mandates. It's gonna create financial chaos. Can you go into that Pioneer study and just go over what the cost might be, if there's any, with adopting this?
Sure. They basically broke it down into three buckets, and I hadn't heard of the Pioneer Institute. I've been around education for a while, and it's an organization up in Massachusetts that has historically focused on Massachusetts issues. And this is an organization that is anti-Common Core and has been anti-Common Core. So what I did is I looked at this to see where that $600 million number came from. $300 million, for example, of the 650 some million, is the cost over 7 years. This is a 7-year projection. Is a cost of over 7 years of putting into place an assessment system that's an online assessment system. So they figured that that $300 million would cost for the computers and the upgrades to put in this national test, this national online assessment system. There's only one problem. We're not doing that. We have not signed up for that. We said we were not going to do that. We're going to stay with the PSSA. We're going to stay with the Keystones. We're not signing up for those consortium. Yet they said that it would cost $300 million for Pennsylvania in order to do that assessment that we're not doing. So that's a little bit of a question mark. The other areas is the online the curriculum development. Well, Pennsylvania school districts go through curriculum development on their own every 3 or 4 or 5 years. Plus, we're giving an awful lot of free curriculum, well, state-developed curriculum, Pennsylvania teachers working together to put curriculum out there for the whole school districts. So that cost is mitigated. And then the third area that they really think is going to be professional development. Again, over a 7-year time period, that they expect it to be about $150 million or so, or $100 million over 7 years. Over 7 years, Pennsylvania taxpayers are going to spend $3.5 billion on professional development over the next 7 years, regardless of whether or not Common Core was in place. So all we're going to be doing is moving some of that money that's already invested in Pennsylvania's teachers towards helping to understand how to implement Pennsylvania versions of Common Core. So so it's a pretty shaky math on that analysis.
It's also funny that we've had a 2-year moratorium on professional development for teachers and administrators, which I don't think really any school district in the entire Commonwealth actually took advantage of those cost savings.
No, and we know what this is about. This is about helping teachers upgrade their skills so that they can increase their instructional abilities in the classroom to drive some of these changes that we need for kids.
Another one is my understanding that all public schools in Commonwealth, including charter and cyber charters, will be required to implement Common Core standards. Homeschoolers are worried that this will devastate. We won't have any more homeschooling. We won't have any more choice in education whatsoever. I visited a cyber charter school actually today. Flat out asked them what they thought about Common Core, and they were excited about it. They're very excited. They want to see more rigorous standards, and they were excited to push their students to higher levels each and every day. It's
one of those
estimates. So
well, that's one of those myths that's out there as well. This does not touch homeschoolers, and it doesn't touch the private schools at all. This is only for Pennsylvania's public schools. It's going through a regulation package that addresses public schools in Pennsylvania, just like our curriculum, or just like our standards over the past 20 years in Pennsylvania has only addressed public schools in Pennsylvania. So this isn't going to have an impact on homeschoolers, or it's going to have an impact on the private schools at all. This is only for the public schools. As far as the curriculum is concerned, what we're actually seeing is access to more and various types of curriculum, because we now have set the goals, and we have many more providers coming online who are offering their services free online of lesson plans and other things that can help a whole range of teachers, whether they be private school, public school, it doesn't matter, move towards move towards these standards if they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like a cost saving. Instead of maybe purchasing books, you can get it more effectively and easier, a lower cost by doing online.
One of the things we've done in the corporate administration in the last couple of years is develop this this portal we have at the Pennsylvania Department of Education called the Standards Alignment System, SAS. And when we came in, this portal had about a couple thousand independent users. Now we're up to 145,000 Pennsylvania teachers and educators that can go online for free and download lesson plans, curriculum guides, professional development opportunities that were all developed by Pennsylvania teachers. So you're right. What this will help do is actually cut down the cost to school districts of introducing new curriculum into the classroom, when in the past they had to go out and buy the textbooks. They had to go out and buy all those other services aligned with the textbooks, and that costs an awful lot of money. And we cut that down quite a bit by that infusion of technology that we've been doing.
That's great. Let's go with standardized tests. There's a big push out there against Common Core that said we're going to be part of a nationalized test that's going to include data mining, pulling all this information up to the federal government where they're going to review it. I don't know what they're going to do with it. I haven't read the full report on that. But is data mining embedded in the Pennsylvania Common Core, and are we going to get stuck with a national test?
No. No data mining that's required out of Common Core, and no on the Pennsylvania participation in the national test. Going back to first, let's take the testing issue. There were a number of states that came together in two separate consortium that said, we want to develop a single test for 25 states in one and about 20 states in the other. Pennsylvania signed up a couple years ago to be involved in both, but we're actually not. We're just listening to the conversation. We're doing our own thing in Pennsylvania. We're not instituting both of those tests. And I think when it's done, only about 20 or 25 states will actually participate in one of those two consortium. Some of the concerns were raised because the Obama administration in the stimulus package put some money out there to help develop those assessments. And because they put the money out there, that goes back to the federal involvement in it. We're not participating. We're not going to bring those tests to Pennsylvania, so that's not a concern at all that we're worried about. And then as far as the data mining is concerned, we will not be sending any identifiable information to the federal government, any new information to the federal government about students in Pennsylvania. Everything is on the aggregate basis. If anything that goes to Washington at all, any data at all, will not be about individual students, and it won't be things that we haven't already been sending for years and years and years, which is minimal, very minimal.
What is sent? What kind of data do the federal government collect?
Usually school-based or district-based data. And it's usually data that we already publicize. It's almost always data. Actually, I can't think of a data set that we don't already make public at the state level that isn't given to the federal government. So there's no individual student ID. They can't find out how my children are doing. My children's data or their information. They go to public school in Pennsylvania. That's not going to the federal government. I don't even think it gets much farther than the school district. So all that information stays here in Pennsylvania or at the local school district.
Great. I understand that prior to PA's adoption of the Common Core, PA had in its own standards for ELA and math. How different are these new Common Core standards from our current previous academic standards?
Well, our standards in language arts and these standards in language arts are skills of what students should be able to do on dissecting paragraphs. What's the topic sentence? How do you construct a storyline? Things of that nature, skill set. There was some concern about the standards that was been going on in the various states, that our students weren't reading as much nonfiction. Not fiction, we're reading too much fiction. And so what we're asking is that students be exposed to more nonfiction at the higher grades than they have been at the past. But it's across the entire curriculum. So one of the criticisms out there is that in our literature course, we're going to require students to read government manuals. That's not true. Nonfiction, what we're talking about, can be the Federalist Papers or the Anti-Federalist Papers or John Locke or some other thing that would be very helpful to learn in history or economics. But the literature, To Kill the Mockingbird, Canterbury Tales, all those still stay within the domain of the literature. And I think that's critically important. We just need our students to be able to comprehend better different types of informational text. And when you get up to the high school level, history will be a different subject matter than economics, then that will be social studies, and all those areas is where that greater exposure to nonfiction reading comes into play.
Yeah, and again, there's no list.
There's no list
Dictating what fiction and nonfiction will be anyway.
That would be the curriculum that we have always said in Pennsylvania rest in the domain of the school districts and the teachers.
How about math? I know one of the big arguments is algebra is at 9th grade now, so you can't take it in 8th grade, and you're going to have to hire a private tutor out of your own pocket in order for your student to take advanced mathematics before they enter college.
So that's another one of those myths that we need to address. There are some states, not Pennsylvania, that say very specifically Algebra 1 will be taught at the 9th grade level. And I think California is one that in their adoption they're actually moving it from 8th grade to 9th grade. We don't have a grade specific in Pennsylvania as to when Algebra 1 is taught. Most kids take their Algebra 1 courses in 7th and 8th grade in Pennsylvania. So it's up to the school district to determine when that Algebra 1 course will be taught. We just say when you teach Algebra 1, these are the concepts that have to be embedded in Algebra 1. So you're still going to take Algebra 1, Algebra 2, calculus, trigonometry as you go forward. It's just that Algebra 1 is left up to the school district to determine when it's going to be. And we're instituting the new Keystone exams that will be an Algebra 1 exam. We're seeing most students that are taking it now are taking it at 8th grade. Which is where Pennsylvania kids, I think, should be taking it.
Yeah. Will we be looking at adopting more Common Core standards down the line, or are we kind of done after this?
Well, the initiative is going forward with other states and other academic areas like science and social studies. I believe that a group of states just put out a new science standards. We don't have any intention right now of bringing those other Common Core standards into Pennsylvania. We really want to focus on the language arts and the math, in large part because those are some of the foundation skills that students need, that no matter what you plan to do when you graduate from high school, you need to be able to write a strong cover letter. You need to be able to read a strong text. You need to be able to do Algebra 1. And if you have those skills, then I think we're going to be able to make sure that you're successful in the life that you do. But we have no intention to bring in the science standards or the social studies standards.
Okay. Some organizations out there claim that Common Core standards are simply not rigorous enough. It will ultimately mean that all students are being taught to the lowest common denominator. Some said that math at Common Core will cause Pennsylvania students to fall 2 years behind their international peers. With regard to ELA, students will be forced to substitute literary tests for informational tests, which I think you went over very well. Won't these standards make our students less college and career ready as opposed to making them more so, which should be the goal of the Common Core standards?
Yeah, if that was the case, then I think the governor and I think the legislature and certainly I would be up in arms about this, because we would not be making Pennsylvania competitive for the years ahead. We would not be doing right by these students and giving them the tools that they need to be successful no matter what they choose to be. This is actually raising the bar. When we set the standards for the first time in 1997, it was a much different environment. Most of the viewers today probably have some type of smartphone that they own. They weren't even around back then. Now technology is infusing the workplace. How we learn is a lot different. Our expectations of what students need are not the expectations that we had when we originally set the standards that Pennsylvania schools have been under back in the 1990s. And this is absolutely raising the bar so that our kids can be successful. And one of the quick returns that I think we're going to see is that if our students master these academic standards that we hope that they will, is when they go to college, when they go to post-secondary, there's going to be a decrease in remediation. You know, a lot of our kids walk across that stage in June of their senior year. We hand them that piece of parchment. They enroll into a post-secondary school. The first thing they have to do is turn around and take high school math. That's a drain on the taxpayers. That's a drain on the pocketbooks of the moms and dads out there, the tuition payers out there. If we can get and raise the bar for the standards, they'll be able to go into college and not have to take those remediation courses. And I think that's going to be one of the quick returns that we get by the implementation of Pennsylvania's Common Core.
Yeah, I visit our Hack campus, Harrisburg Area Community College. We have a great one in York.
We do.
Huge growth. They're adding classes and students every day.
Sure.
And I know they have a huge issue with remediation, bringing students in and bringing them up to
when
just
you look
a par level.
When you look at some of the numbers that I've seen for our community colleges, so students who have graduated a couple months ago in the senior year of high school, we have 30, 40, 50% of those kids, of those students, who take a remedial course. It's not right to them, it's not fair to them that we give them that diploma and say you're ready to go, but then when they enter the post-secondary and community colleges, they have to take a remedial course before they start taking credits.
And not to mention the billions of dollars of taxpayers' money that went in to educate those kids, and they're coming out spending their own money on tuition.
We're paying for that math course twice. We're paying for that math course when they're a sophomore and a junior in high school, and we're subsidizing through state loans, through federal loans, through the state subsidies to the community colleges or public universities for them to take that math course again.
And a couple quick hits. Mandated curriculum.
No mandated curriculum in Pennsylvania. Curriculum is strictly up to the school districts.
Curriculum decisions, again, are based on the school districts.
Absolutely.
They make their own determination.
What we do at the state, the only thing we do at state with curriculum is we give some ideas and some suggested lesson plans, but a school district is left entirely up to them to see what they want to use.
And if parents don't like curriculum, school board.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. One big thing I've heard, and it's a huge rumor, is that we're going to be mapping students' brains and scanning them. This was the one that kind of set me over the edge. Started questioning a lot of this anti-Common Core stuff. Will we be brain scanning students?
No, we won't be brain scanning students in Pennsylvania. And as far as I'm concerned, I've seen some of those stories too. I don't think it's going to be happening in the country either.
Yeah, great. Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. I appreciate your time on addressing some concerns we're hearing out there on Common Core standards.
Thanks for giving me a chance to be with you. You've been a great leader for kids and parents in Pennsylvania. I'm glad to sit with you today.
Appreciate it. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today's program. I'm State Representative Seth Grove. If you need any assistance with any state government matter, please feel free to contact me in my local office or through my website. That information will be shown in a moment. Thanks for watching me, and please join me next time for Legislative Report.